Welcome to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and then the people that bring them to us. Before we get started, let's go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves. And I'll go ahead and start with you, Jeanne.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm Jeanne Adams. I write urban fantasy, paranormal romantic suspense, and space adventure with my friend Nancy Northcott. And that's me.
All right, perfect. Alma.
Hi, I'm Alma Alexander, better known in the internet as the Duchess of Fantasy, hence the headgear. I've got three things I would like to talk about today. First is this set of two interlocking books, which I don't know what the best way of doing. I don't know how people can see that. Can you actually see anything?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, these are. I'll tell you perhaps later on how the idea came about, but they are about a retirement and rest home for superheroes, third class. I will explain. The book that came out this summer is my first real science fiction novel, which is called The Second Star. And this is something I'm kind of, when people ask you where you get your ideas, well, I dreamed this.
Perfect.
Other than that, I tend to write more fantasy kind of stuff. So all of this is a little bit off the left field. So more about things later. But.
All right, perfect. Bobby.
Hi, I'm Bobby Nash. I write in all kinds of genres for multiple publishers. I do a lot of, for other publishers, I do a lot of sci-fi, pulp, a little bit of fantasy, some horror. For the stuff that I do through my own press, I have a press called Ben Books. I do a lot of crime fiction and action thrillers, things like that, like the Snow books that you see the posters on the wall, mysteries, thrillers, more modern day stuff. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right, perfect.
So let's go
ahead. So let's go ahead and get into our recent releases. And I'll start with you, Alma. And as you kind of mentioned, kind of give me an idea of where the idea for the stories came from.
Well, when it comes to these two, I've actually learned something new since I got these two books out, and that is the concept of a mosaic novel. Basically, these books are two collections of interlocking short stories. Each of them is tied to a year, hence the odd years, the even years. And basically, my concept of, as one of my main characters who founds Valhalla actually explains, there's superheroes first class, which are your basic gods who are what they are, and they can't help being what they are, and they're superheroes by definition because they can do whatever they want, and that's just a sort of superhero basal level. Superhero second class is your Batman, who basically has enough money to throw at the problem, and he's a rich guy who can buy his gadgets or create his gadgets, and he can become a superhero by that definition. Superheroes third class are people like you and me. And anybody can be a superhero triggered by something that triggers a specific ability, special ability. And all of these stories are about different superheroes who end up in Valhalla, tied to different years. So what I've got here is, for example, in the even years, which is the first book, I've got the first story is 1918, then 1942, then 1968, then 1974, 1980, 1986, 2002, 2018. And the things they're tied to are things like the Dust Bowl, Mount St. Helens, Challenger, things that people are going to recognize, something that triggers something special in a human being that qualifies them to be a superhero third class who eventually ends up getting retired in this place. And what ties it together is an orderly called Eddie, who basically appears in every story, who is the confidant and the person everybody leans on, and he knows all the stories and he knows how to deal with these people, and he's more than he appears, but you're gonna have to read the books to find out more. But this whole thing started because a friend of mine on the internet threw something at me as a prompt, which was, I would really love to read a short story about an old lady superhero with an orderly sidekick in a nursing home. So the first story that I wrote had that as a sort of baseline, and then the whole thing mushroomed, as all of my things usually do. And then I suddenly wound up with 2 books out of it. Yeah, I just do that kind of thing. Do you want me to talk about the novel now or later?
Oh, go ahead. Jump into Second Star.
The Second Star, which is this thing, I eventually come up with things. And people say, where do you get your ideas? And I tend to tell them I've got an idea tree in the backyard, and when one's ripe, I just pick it. But actually, some people believe that. But this thing, I actually woke up from a dream, which I completely don't remember. But the last thing I remember, like something being thrown out on the shore after the tide went out, was one sentence: "A soul is like a starfish." And I kind of went, okay, but what does that mean? My poor long-suffering husband, who tends to get greeted with, "Listen to what I dreamed last night," when I wake up every morning, he kind of looked at this and went, okay, tell me more. And I started building on this thing. And this entire thing just accreted, like I put a piece of grit into an oyster, and all of a sudden I was watching the story maker being layered onto it, layer by layer, while I was watching it. And I kept on going, oh, but what if, this? And eventually what happened was a story that took me almost by surprise. And I won't be giving away too much if you might guess the Second Star. There's a star story that pretty much everybody's connected with, which is the Christmas star, right? Well, I won't tell you anything new if I tell you that this is a kind of connected to that, but somebody who read it sort of called it a Christmas story, and I said, no, it isn't. It's a hand grenade thrown into the Christmas story.
Sounds like my kind of read.
So that one came out in July, and actually the 2 weeks it came out, it actually soared up to close to #1 on Amazon, and left me sitting here with my jaw on the floor. But yeah, that was it had a pretty good launch.
Excellent. That's great. Congratulations.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So Bobby, how about you?
Well, this year I revisited an old friend, but in a new book. I put out the first in what's going to be a series of novellas that I published through Ben Books, which is my own imprint. As you can see here on the wall there, the Snow Books is where was my first real series venture, doing it myself. Very action adventure-y, and kind of like my love letter to the old shows of the 70s and 80s, or books from the 70s and 80s with PIs and those type of characters. So it's those type of stories. So I started doing novellas and releasing novellas, and then every 3 novellas they get collected into a collection. And so it's done well enough that I've decided to do it with other characters. So I released this year In the Wind, which is the first in a line. It's going to be a series of books centered around the sheriff of a small fictional Georgia town called Summersville. And he's the sheriff of the county. There's also the city, which has its own police force, but he handles the county. This is actually the third appearance of the sheriff. My very first novel was a book called Evil Ways, which was a murder mystery itself, a thriller that took place in this small town. So the sheriff was a secondary character. He was never intended to go beyond that book. And so that novel came out. I wrote another novel, which was not intended to be connected at all, but I needed, for the second half of the book, needed to take place out in a very rural area. And so this little light bulb went off, says, you just put a lot of effort into creating this town. Why don't you use this town? So I put it in that town, but still didn't plan to use any of the characters. But as the story kept going on, this little voice in the back of my head goes, isn't this where you would call the cops? And so the character ended up being a big part of that second book. So again, never really thought I'd ever use them again. But ever so often, just in the back of my mind, those characters would remind me that they were there and they still had more to say. And so when it took a little while, but I finally got an idea germinated that I thought would be a good standalone for the sheriff and his deputies. And so that's where In the Wind came from. And it was dealing with a small town problem of, it starts out with the federal marshals and the FBI have a witness that they are hiding in a safe house in Somersville County. They didn't bother to inform the local law enforcement that they were there, but they have this safe house. They rented a house. Well, the bad guys figure out where it is, and they come in, guns blazing, blow the house up, big fire. But they kill a lot of people, but the witness gets away. And so now the sheriff has to find the witness before the other people hunting for him do. So it's, in addition to being the mystery in it, there's a lot of thriller because there's a time element, a time crunch, and we've got to find him first. And people are trying to stop him from finding it. So it was a lot of fun. It was really fun to revisit Somersville as well, show how time has passed since those other books came out, which has actually led to ideas for future stories, the changes that have occurred over the intervening years since we last visited those characters. So I'm having fun with it. I'm already loosely plotted the second book, which I hope to have out early next year. And it's a lot of fun. It's been very well received so far, so I'm very happy about that. I had a couple reviews, compared it to the TV show Longmire and the book series Longmire, which is a compliment I'll take all day long.
Absolutely.
And so that's, so it's kind of in that feel of like, Longmire, Justified, where setting is very important. It's about living in these rural small towns that have their own kind of flavor, and so working in that and playing in that has been a lot of fun. So so I'm going to do more of those. This is the first book in the series, and also I'm working on a sequel to Evil Ways, and so the sheriff is going to make a small appearance in there as well. So a lot of my stuff that I'm doing myself and publishing myself has found this odd interconnectivity that was not planned from the beginning. Because now I've got the Evil Ways books, the sheriff books, the Deadly Games. Snow grew up in that same fictional town, so there's bits of crossover. Actually, in The Wind, one of the side characters from Snow makes an appearance. So there's this big interconnectivity of this little universe that I didn't intend, but it just keeps growing. And so I'm having a lot of fun writing that. And the Snow books, I'm up to book 5 of those. Same format. They're this 30,000 word novella length. And I doing them myself, I thought that would be an interesting way to sell stuff at a lesser price than trying to do a full novel because for people that don't know who I am or want to try something new. And I'm finding good success with it. We put them out in ebook, and we actually do print. Mostly we were doing the small print books for conventions. People were buying these at conventions. Obviously, we're not doing that this year, but I sell them through my store and things like that. People can buy autographed copies or whatnot. But we do an ebook, we do an audio book, and then every 3 of the novellas, we'll collect them into, and I wish I had one of the Snow ones handy, but we put them into a larger size. Well, kind of like this book, but it's not a Snow book. But we'll put them in like a regular trade, a little bigger than and release those as a full, 3 of them technically makes up like a full novel. And, we can release them into multiple hardcover, paperbacks, etc. So we're trying to put books out for whoever wants them in whatever format they want them. So, but, and then, since I held it up, this year saw the release of the hardcover of Suicide Bomb. The paperback came out last year, but Suicide Bomb is another mystery thriller about the villain has discovered a way to turn ordinary people into assassins, and then after they complete their assignment, they kill themselves. And so it's almost like the perfect crime. As long as he can set it up and not be anywhere near it. But of course, like most good villains, his hubris gets a little bit the better of him when he decides that the cop, the homicide detective who is investigating one of the crimes, is the perfect foil, and he wants to make sure he stops her, beats her like it's a game. And of course that gets them into this cat and mouse of trying to catch and stop him, and him trying to destroy her life and send her in the wrong direction. So it's a lot of fun. I kill a lot of people in this book in very unique and creative ways.
This is when the recording breaks down and you get stopped, and I kill a lot of people.
I kill a lot of people.
I'm absolutely on the right panel because I love to do that.
Yeah, my brother once told somebody about me. It says, "You do realize he kills people for a living," and but it's not
I've been told by my beloved that he never knew what an efficient serial killer he was marrying when he married.
Yeah. I've had people that knew me before I was a writer and then pick up some of my books and go, one friend actually told me once, she says, "You're a little creepy to me now." And I took that as a great compliment. But so yeah, as long as I kill them in print, I'm good. I haven't
My husband says that's why I'm such an even-tempered, lovely person to be around.
Yeah. I've
kill people on the page.
I've never killed them in person, but there are many people I know that have died horrible deaths in book. And actually, I've had people come to me now. So will come and, "Can I die in one of your books?" And I'm like, "Okay, if I must." So that's been a lot of fun. But yeah, so those are what I have coming out this year. I have more stuff coming out later this year that I just don't know dates yet. I'm doing a series for Falstaff Books, which is part of the Bubbleverse extended universe. My character is called Hunter Houston, the Horror Hunter. And I'm calling each book a Hunter Houston tall tale. And they take place in the Bubbleverse. So it's comedy and horror and, action and things like that. Very tongue in cheek, a lot of silly situations, but a lot of fun. So I'm enjoying those. I'm working on book 3 now, so I'm not sure when book 1 will come out, but I'm pretty sure it's soon. And then I have 3 books coming out with the character behind me here, Domino Lady, who I've written before. Domino Lady is a pulp character from the 1930s. She appeared in 6 stories in 1936, and then they stopped. And she's since fallen into the public domain. And several years ago, one of the publishers I worked with decided that, hey, we're going to do Domino Lady stories. And so I wrote a short story for the Domino Lady anthology. And I just fell in love with the character. And so the publisher keeps inviting me back to write her. So I'm thrilled to keep, playing with the character. And there's a comic trade coming out called Domino Lady's Threesome, which is a team-up book. All the titles are very innuendo-ish because in the 30s, she was considered the spicy pulps. They would be kept, behind the counter, wrapped up in a bag. And they're very tame if you read them now. But so innuendo is a lot like I wrote a Domino Lady novel a few years back, and they called it Money Shot, but it's a political thriller. And then there's another anthology coming out called Gentlemen Prefer Domino Lady. And then I just turned in a short story for something else last night that will be out sometime soon. So that's this year.
That is busy.
Right. Well, as much as I hate not doing all the conventions and travel that I normally do in events, my God, I've been productive this year being home every weekend.
No excuse not to write now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how about you, Jeannie?
Well, I haven't been nearly as busy as Bobby. Last year, 7 of us got together and published Christmas at Canham Castle. And it's an anthology of 7 stories set in a castle on the Welsh Marches in England. And it's set in the present day, and there are a variety of stories. Gail Martin contributed a male romance, and Ceresia Glass contributed a thriller, a paranormal thriller, and mine's a paranormal suspense. And Nancy Northcott was in it too, and Karen Crane and Donna McMeans contributed a historical. But like Bobby was actually referencing, we created this world, this fictional castle with a fictional town, and there are maps and there are businesses. And so we thought, this mess is just way too good to waste. So this year, actually came out last Friday, is a series of novellas back at Caneham Castle called Trick or Treat at Caneham Castle. And those are Halloween stories set at a Halloween ball in the self-same Caneham Castle. And so that was one of the big things that came out this fall. I did a couple things in the spring that were short stories and novellas. I don't know if y'all saw the release of the anthology Predators and Petticoats, but both Nancy Northcott and she and I write a space adventure called, the first book was called Welcome to Outcast Station. And Outcast Station is well into the future, well into the far reaches of space, and it's basically where careers go to die. So Outcast Station, Welcome to Outcast Station was followed by Christmas on Outcast Station. And we were approached by the Predators and Petticoats folks to contribute to Predators and Petticoats. So we both contributed an Outcast Station novella to, or short story to the Predators and Petticoats, which was super fun. And several of my novels, I write a series called The Witch's Walk, or The Witches of Haven Harbor, which started with the novel The Witch's Walk. And both of my stories in the Caneham, I keep pointing back there because that's the cover for Trick or Treat at Caneham Castle. Both stories in both Christmas and Trick or Treat are Haven Harbor witches stories. But one of the things I really had fun with this year was I was able to get back the rights for all of the books I published with my New York publisher. So I was able to manage to get through editing and updating a book called Blood on the Altar. I don't know if you can see that because I didn't have a cover copy of it, but it is a romantic thriller, and it's a serious chase book. And it was so much fun. Bobby, you referenced this, and I'll say again, when you go back to those characters and you read that story, you're so re-energized to enter that world again. And it was so much fun to update that book and bring it current. And I already have two more stories based on that one spinning off, and I've got them drafted. And when the heck I'm going to write them, no idea.
Yeah, it's really, there's something wonderful about revisiting those old friends. That just
It really is. And you know, it's been several years on the copyright because, of course, they were with the New York publisher. So I hadn't looked at those files in forever. And when I got the rights back, I was like, this is so cool. I get to go back to these places that I created and the start of my career and kind of play with them. So that's been super fun. So mostly that's where I've been, the area I've been operating in, and just making sure I've got those other two on the docket to get them, or the other ones that I got back from my publisher. I've got two more sitting waiting to get them out, but that'll happen after the first of the year. And the next book in my urban fantasy series, which is called The Rum Runners Ghost, should be out after the first of the year. But unlike Bobby, I've had craziness going on, so I haven't gotten back all my weekends in terms of writing. But yeah, that's sort of where I'm at.
All right, perfect. And that kind of leads into my next question. I understand that it might be different now, like Bobby said, and I'll start with you, Bobby. You said that not going to conventions is giving you more time to write, but what is your writing process normally?
Normally, that's normal. I try to write a little every day. I have a pretty full docket between doing my stuff and working for publishers. I've learned to juggle. Juggling is a very important part of my job because, deadlines for other publishers tend to be more frantic than I can go, okay, I can wait another week or two on mine. But I try to sit down every day. I'm a one-man band with my publishing company. It's just me. So my day gets broken up between I've got to do this social media stuff, or I'm doing these interviews, or I'm reaching out, on a normal time, reaching out to conventions. Now I'm reaching out to places going, I see you're doing virtual events. Are you looking, I'm reaching out to all these different places for promotional tours or promotional opportunities. In addition to taking time to write, this has been the month of September and into October, especially. These type of events, the virtual panels, have been just, I think I did 20 in September, and and they're fun and I love them. But man, I didn't realize, you don't realize how much you're doing, and I'm sure Jason you're probably doing a lot of these, with hosting and all that. But between the conventions, especially conventions, really have gotten into it, because between Dragon Con and Imaginarium and now Multiverse and Monsterama and all those happening around the same time. Plus what I do here I've done panels, here on Continual and, Go Indie Now and other places like that. There's a lot of opportunities to do stuff like this as part of my, I look at this as part of my promotional, it's part of the promoting of not just the books, but, me or, my brand or whatever you want to call it. And meeting other people. I love meeting other people. That's one of the great things I get out of conventions, which I've not got to do this year. So I've met a lot of pretty cool people through doing virtual events. So my day gets staggered with a lot of that. Usually I try to start the day with checking social media, answering. I get a lot of requests for things, and answering those. I try to answer all mail that comes into me. So that takes a little time, and then interview requests or whatever. There's or if someone buys stuff through my store, I've got to put that together. So those type of things usually are the start of the day. Then once I'm fully awake, I then try to write a little, and then
you answer mail while you're asleep. That's a new one.
Yeah, man, if I could find a way to write while I'm asleep, that would be awesome. Because man, because I lay down in bed and I start thinking scenes, and they never go as well.
Now I want your email, because I want to see what one of these replies looks like.
Oh, yeah, I hope I'm coherent. So I am not a morning person. So
neither am I.
Yeah, but the beauty of I was already working from home before the world went kablooey. But still, it's the being having everybody else at home is really throwing me off, because I'm up at 4 a.m. getting ready to go to bed, and people are like, other people who normally would be like off at their day jobs during regular hours are up at 4 a.m, and I'm like, that's just throwing me off my schedule. So I write full time, and so I try to stagger my days, but I also I take care of my father. It's just he and I. Both my mother and brother passed away recently, so we've had family. Oh, thank you. We've had family stuff, so it's just my dad and I, and so we live together now. We're both in the same house. He's not helpless, but there's stuff he can't do that I take care of, and so the two of us do things as well that impact my writing time, but are important. Like we like to go, like tomorrow, for instance, today after we record this, we take at least one day a week and we just travel, because he's not quite used to being stuck at home all day, all night like I am. So at least once, sometimes twice a week, we'll get in the car and we ride. We make a day of it. We may be gone 6, 7, 8 hours. We don't really go anywhere. We just go. So we enjoy that. That's been fun. So stuff like that. And so, and then the usual, things that happen just from being alive. You got to buy groceries, you got to cook dinner, you got to, you got to wash clothes, you got to, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of writing, there's no set, like I got to start at 1 o'clock and stop at 5. It's more just, I've got to do something every day. But I do also plan in days off if I need them. Like if I know, like I said, I know tomorrow we're going to go off, so I'm doing extra work today to kind of keep, because with my deadlines, I know what I need to do every day to meet all my deadlines. And so I try to plan that in. He's not so good about letting me know ahead of time when he wants to do things. So planning is not always easy, but yeah, so.
All right. And Jeannie, how about you?
Well, the before schedule and the current schedule are radically different. In more normal times, I would get up, get my youngest off to school, and go get coffee at the Starbucks, come back home and sit down and write until he got home from school. Then there would be the usual, what kind of homework do you have? And dinner and, you know, all the things you were talking about, Bobby, laundry and what have you. Now, I have been used to being here by myself quietly with three dogs, three big dogs. I have two labs and an Irish water spaniel. And we have our little set patterns, right? Get up, go do the things, you know, come back, let everybody out, go for a walk, take one for a walk, come back and write for a couple hours, take the second one for a walk, come back and write for a couple hours, take the third one for a walk, just to get everybody out of the house, right? Well, now there are people here. It is not quiet at all.
That is refrain. That is refrain. There are people here.
Yes, yes. Now, I'm an extrovert in an introverted job. I'm very extroverted. I love the humans. I love them. But it was a radical change to go from, maybe like 8, 9 hours of quiet, me and the dogs, to there are people here all the time. So that's been a super big change. And of course, as I'm sure you've read in the news and whatever, with when you have a student at home, you are expected to help. So because the school system is overwhelmed and they're trying to figure all this stuff out. So I've been helping him do Zoom stuff and figure out how to do, business online and do pay for, test, college test things online and all these things. So that has been an interesting twist to my writing time in terms of being everybody's tech support. And because my husband's working from home too, he didn't have as hard a time as my youngest son did adapting. My oldest son is at college, and that's been crazy. So it's been really, really a strange adaptation. But as best as I can, I try to be in front of my laptop by 10 a.m. and work till 2. Now, again, like Bobby said, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, like last night, I got working on a short story for a piece that that somebody asked me to put in for an anthology, and it got a hold of me, and I was up till 2. So, but normally I try to work 10 to about 3 or 4, then take a break, do dog things, do children things, and be back at it maybe for a couple hours in the evening.
Perfect. Alma.
Well, I have to ask, what's normal?
Yeah.
Exactly.
The thing is, I don't have a thing. I don't work according to a schedule. If somebody asks me how did you write a novel, my first question is which one.
Yeah.
They're all different. Every single one is different. Currently, I've got about 4 different projects on the back burner, which is getting really crowded. And I just need to finish off a couple of things here. I need 2 stories for this, and I need a story for that, and there's this sneak attack novel that turned up out of nowhere, and it's eating my brain from behind, and I've got to deal with that. And I've got a different thing that I've actually got the research for sitting in front of me, but I put that away because I've got other things that I'm doing. And as everyone else is saying, there's all kinds of other things going on as well. I have an elderly mom too. She's 85, she's living by herself, she's increasingly frail, and she's notoriously difficult about letting me know what she needs in good time. I mean, I write all her checks, but she's got her checkbook, and she's suddenly going to turn out and around and tell me, oh, I only got 1 check left in my checkbook, and Mom, how are you going to pay you? This kind of
Yeah.
keeping on top of 2 different households. My husband had a stroke about 17 years ago now. And I mean, he's fine, but he's disabled. So I've got an elderly reasonably elderly, he's much older than me, husband on one side who's disabled, and I've got an old mom on the other side of the town, which and I'm the only driver in the family. So yeah.
Ooh, that's an adventure.
So yeah, my days have been slightly full about these things. Every now and again, I'm going to get a phone call, a panicked phone call from the other side of town going, I need to drop everything and go over there. But other than that, I've been picking up a few things here and there as you do. There's an agency working out of the UK who does like editing and critique reports and what have you. And I've done a few critique reports for various writers for them. And what that means is they're going to send me a manuscript and I have to read this and write a 3,000 word minimum critique about what's wrong with this manuscript. And unfortunately, I have a problem. I'm a snarky person. And I tend to be
Wait, that's a problem?
Yes, it is when you're trying to write a critique report and trying to keep everybody happy.
Okay.
If I see something that kind of yaps at me, I'm going to go, you've got to be kidding me. I can't put that into a report. So this takes a little while to do. But I've just done 4 of them in quick succession. And usually they range. They have this gamut from somebody who comes in, which is obviously a first draft of a not really well thought of thing, but they just thought they were going to write it. And then you end up writing a 10,000 word report going, there's so much wrong with this that I don't know where to start. And then I got this one guy who, and I'm going to blow somebody else's horn here. I've got this one guy who wrote, who sent in a partial for a critique. And my instant response was, where's the rest of this novel? I want to read this now.
Oh, I love it when that happens.
And I mean, he's so brilliant that I hate him. This is the first time novelist who has created a perfect book.
Ah, good for him though. Good for him.
Good for him. And basically, I did an edit for him, and he's actually coming back to me on Skype on Friday, because what I want to do is I've got a few editorial connections up my sleeve, and I'm going to get this book published. I'm going to,
because you want to read it, right?
I'm going to make it my mission to get this book published because it needs to be out there. If I tell you this is a book. This is a love child between Mad Max and Alice in Wonderland, whose godparents are China Miéville, Jeff Vandermeer, and the young Roger Zelazny, and then it was given up to Clockwork Orange in the year 2020 to raise.
Sounds complicated and fabulous.
It is. So that's partly what I've been doing, and then I've got this this project that's coming to fruition in December the 8th. It's coming out. I've got these
That's
3.
my birthday.
I've got these 3 books that I wrote as a sort of, I keep on calling them a triptych rather than a trilogy, because what it is it's 3 books, each of them told through the point of view from a different character, but it's the same story. So I'm just kind of looking at the same story from 3 different angles, and I'm putting those together out as an omnibus edition that's coming out in December. So I'm in the throes of getting that proofread and formatted and all that stuff. And then I've got a whole new other project, which I've got books that the rights have come back to me for 4 books, 4 young adult books, which have had a rather checkered history, starting out being published by HarperCollins, getting caught up in what you all might know as the bloodbath of 2008. I lost 2 editors and 3 publicists in the space of 6 months.
It was wicked awful, wasn't it?
And basically those books decided to vanish in a puff of smoke. They came back to me. I tried getting them through another smaller publishing house. That didn't work. The rights came back to me, and I'm going to put them out now. And I'm actually in the process of getting some really spiffing new covers put on these things. So,
oh, good.
I've got a lot of stuff going on in the background. It's just that every now and again, I'm gonna go upstairs out of my office and go and spin in front of my husband, say, "What do I do now? What do I do next?"
That's part of my writing process is to spin.
But these are stories I'm hearing a lot more lately. I got my rights back. That has been a big thing the last couple of years, and I've gone
the
through
happy
that as well.
dancing.
Yeah, because I've gone through that as well. Like the snow books, I had at a publisher, and it took me a while to do it, but I eventually got those back. And
What a relief, right?
Yeah, and it's because there's this big shift in publishing that's happening to where, because when I started, man, when I first got started, it was in the 90s when I was first published. Back then, the thought of self-publishing your own book just meant you weren't good enough to be hired by a real publisher.
Right.
That was the common wisdom. To whereas now it is absolutely a viable option.
And actually, it's becoming the most professional and viable option out there.
Mhm.
One of the funniest things.
To which I have to add, yes, it is. But please, 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 for the love of God, get them edited properly and make sure that you actually got the right
Amen.
story out there.
Yeah.
Amen. But I'll tell you what, Bobby, you said that, it makes me laugh because I have a friend who's a psychic and she's a working psychic. And she told me 25 years ago, she said, you're going to be self-published and you're going to be good at it and you're going to be very successful. I was mortified at the time.
Yeah, because 25 years ago, that was the kiss of death,
Absolutely. That was like selling books out of your trunk kind of thing,
Yeah.
It's like, but
Actually,
selling
books out of your trunk was more respectable.
Yeah. But I'm so pleased for you, Alma, that you've got those books back and are going to get new covers for them and get them out there. Because in that, as you called it, bloodbath, there were so many great stories that ended up falling through the cracks.
There's another thing that I'm fighting the battle for, and this is HarperCollins all over again, because I'm absolutely confused as to in what kind of concept of a business model this works for anybody. I did a massive epic fantasy, which everybody decided, it's 250,000 words. It's a hell of a book. And everybody decided, no, what we're going to do is we're going to publish this is a duology. So I've got these two books that are now basically breaking in the middle. And with a cliffhanger ending, it's supposed to be a cliffhanger ending of one chapter, is now the cliffhanger ending of book one, and book two starts out from that, which is not something I intended, but this is the way it fell out. What HarperCollins did in their wisdom is that they let book two go out of print.
Oh, no.
I cannot get them to give me the rights for book one back.
Oh, that's
I
evil.
do not understand in what
As a reader, I just have to say, that's evil. That's evil.
I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago, and they said they got the rights back to like book 1 and 3 of a series of 4, and we're still fighting on 2 and 4, so they couldn't do anything with
How does this work? If you let part of a series go out of a print, why do you just not let the whole thing go?
Y'all know what it is. It's the numbers. Book 2 sells better, and book 2 and book 4 had higher numbers, and so they're not letting those go. And it's like, you morons! Did you even look at the pattern? But the other thing that's interesting to me is you see so many people who get their rights back, and then the book sales, right? Like you were saying, Alma, about your new release in July, and then the publisher's like, wait a minute. And if you haven't got the rights back to all the books in the series, like you said earlier, Alma, publish, get an editor, make sure it's copy edited. But oh my gosh, wait till you have all the rights back before you put them out.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to find yourself in a position where through no fault of your own, people start hating you because you're not the one in the position to do it. I mean, I know that there's a cliffhanger ending on book 1. I know it's not my fault.
I wrote it. But there was a period where some of the New York publishers wanted to do that. They did it to C.L. Wilson. Her original book, and you were talking, Alma, about reading this book that that you wanted to read the whole story. C.L. Wilson's books, her series of books, there are like 6 or 8 of them, I think. I read the first 55 pages of the first book in a contest, and I was like, what? That's it? I want the rest. And the books were sold at auction to, I think it might have been HarperCollins. I can't remember if it was HarperCollins or Random House, but anyway, and she had written, I think it was 3 massive novels. Well, they broke those up into 7 or 8 books. And she's like, wait, no, but you get, And so there were some places where she had to like either stretch a book to get to a proper ending, or cut a book to like get it in here so that it didn't intersect that. She said it was just appalling.
It's backbreaking stuff, and it's not
Mhm.
something that you actually think about doing, because when you write it in a certain shape.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's the
I
shape
was.
that's in your head. And when they come back with, oh, but you have to change this because we have 6 pages left to fill in book 2, and I'm going,
I have a book that was a continuation of one of my New York books. And they said, no, this is too big of a book. You have to split it. And honestly, at the time, this has been 10 years ago now, I just didn't have the chops to do it. I couldn't do it. So we ended up going with another book that I had, as the option book. I was like, I can't do that. I don't know how to disentangle these two storylines from each other and split the book.
there is that too. You have to have a certain level of experience, and you learn by doing. And essentially, if you're not in the right stage in your development, and they tell you do this, and you're going, how?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they
And-
cannot tell you how, because
Right.
they're not writers. So
Yeah, and you also have to think of your audience too. I can't stand to get to the end of a book and read the words "to be continued," and
yeah,
I didn't get some kind of closure or full story.
right,
I
yeah.
don't mind things going on, but let's close the A plot. I want this book
Yeah.
to give me some resolution.
Yes, you know that thing that I was mentioning, the editing jobs that I was doing. One of manuscripts came my way, was book 2 in a trilogy, but the person who wrote it didn't actually think it was necessary to let me know what went on in book 1, which it turned out it was very necessary, because book 2 started in the middle and ended in the middle, and I had no idea what was going on.
Oops.
Yeah,
Oops.
You've got to fill stuff in. I try to, like with the snow books. I try to make sure the A plot. If you read the first 6, you get one big story. But if you just read one of them, you still get the full A plot.
Yeah.
It's
I try to do
solved.
that too. Yeah.
And but even when you pick up book 2, I try to pepper in things so you know who everybody is.
Yeah.
Why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, but see, Bobby, you're and Alma's point is well taken. You're an experienced writer at this point. But to ask a brand new writer that you've just bought, a New York publishing house that's just bought, to do that kind of thing, that's hard. That's really hard, because it really is one of those things that you have to learn by doing. And even now, I look at that book, and it's one of the ones I've sort of pulled back into the front of the pile, because I thought it was a great story. I loved the story. And of course, now I don't have to sell it to them. I can do it myself, and I don't have to split it apart.
You know
It'll
what
just
they say?
it'll just be a big book.
You know what they say? You have to write 2 million words of crap before you can actually write something 1,000 words that's actually really good. But until you do, you can't tell which is which. You actually have to learn by doing it.
Yeah.
Well, I think I probably.
Let me ask you guys a question. How old were you when you wrote your first novel?
8.
I was in my 20s when I wrote it.
I was
almost 30 when I sold it. Well, actually, technically, that was the first one I sold. In my 20s, I wrote my very first novel, and it was pure crap.
Exactly.
But I finished
the one that I wrote when I was 11 was complete crap.
Yeah. But I finished it, and but finishing it buoyed me to do it again. And that
Writing
second novel.
Being able to get to the place where you can write the end is one of those major benchmarks in a writer's career. The first time you ever do it, the book may be, as you said, 1 million words of absolute and utter crap.
Yeah, well, the thing that you have to learn is how to finish something.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Oh, totally. But in the romance community, we always kind of laugh about the phrase is the book's under the bed.
Yeah.
And because in the olden days, you used to have to print the manuscripts out and send them off to the editor and at your publishing house. So if it got rejected, or if it was utter and complete crap, you basically stuck it under the bed, because you don't want to waste all that paper, right? And those books under the bed are the learning experience. That's the ones that you look back and go, wow, the idea was great. Execution was seriously flawed.
I seriously think that a lot of people don't understand the concept of the first book. The first book you write is not the first book you publish.
Right. I
So
wish
very
more people, I wish more people would have that tattooed on their foreheads. I really do.
Yeah.
Do not publish this.
Well, that's like, it's one of the things like I've never participated in NaNoWriMo because I do this all year long. But I in talking with publishers that I work with, the downside, and I think NaNoWriMo is a wonderful thing for people to use. But the biggest downside is publishers are inundated with first drafts submissions in December.
Mhm.
Books that are not ready to be sent because they think, oh, it's done, but your first draft is done.
Right.
And
My New York editor said that her slush pile readers hated December.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that she said her slush pile readers were trained. If you read the first page and there was a typo, it's out. If you read the first 10 pages and there's not enough interesting to make you to turn page 11, it's out. If anything about page 1 through 5 or 1 through 10 has serious grammar issues, even if it's interesting, it's out. And so she said they would get her, all of her slush readers would end up sending to her about 300 manuscripts a month. And she said, of those 300, this is how she explained to people that if you could write a good book that was clean and smart, that you had a very good chance. She said, okay, I get 300 books after the slush pile. 150 of those are things that are not in my publishing house's wheelhouse. It's not something I will work on. So you haven't done your homework to say, I want suspense and I want this and I want that, but I don't want women's fiction and I don't want this or I don't want that. So she said 150 of them out. So now your chances, if you got through all that, are 1 in 150, not 1 in 300 or 1 in 1,000 that came in that month.
Do your homework, yes.
Yeah, do your homework and write a clean book and get an editor.
All right, so getting back to the books we're talking about today. No, this has been great.
It's like, oh yeah, what was our topic?
I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Jeannie, on this one. Something that surprised you in the writing of one of the stories that you've talked about tonight.
Oh my gosh. Well, something that really surprised me about the rewriting and updating of Blood on the Altar was how many ideas, like the kernels of ideas, I sort of, if you'll pardon the phrase, left on the table. Like I said, I was able to shoot off 2 or 3 ideas from that draft, almost full stories from leads in that story. And I was very surprised about that because my memory of that book had been as it being sort of a standalone, complete, no reason for any other book to come out of it kind of a book. And it was standalone characters that it wasn't like some series where you have brothers and cousins that you can go talk about or do. It felt very complete. And I remembered it that way. And then reading it and updating it, I was like, wow, I left a lot on the table here. But it's like Alma said earlier, I've published 15 books since that book came, probably 16 books since that book came out. So different writer.
How about you, Alma?
Well, when it came to the second star, there are so many layers in there that I never expected. And one of the central, well, I'm gonna give you one spoiler. The basic storyline is that Earth's first starship goes out and into space and disappears, and it gets found 200 years later. And because of faster than light shenanigans, the crew is only 2.5 years older. They come back, they get brought back to Earth, and as one of the characters in there puts it, let's put it this way: 6 people went out, more than 70 came back. They've all got split personalities. They've basically shattered, the psychologically shattered into different people, and each one of them has got, I don't know, 10, 20, 40 people living inside their skulls. And the whole story is basically trying to figure out what happened to them, why, what did this. But what that actually gave me a chance to do is it distilled certain characteristics into a person. And there's one particular character in one of the one particular personality in one of the characters who doesn't have a name. He's just known as the poet. And that's because he tends to see things in a very poetic, very high kind of metaphorical sense. And that gave me the freedom to write poetry in prose. It was absolute, well, I don't mean literal poetry. I don't mean like stanzas, but I mean poetic language. It gave me the opening to just open that window and write this lush stuff. And I loved it. I think I'm more than half split personality myself. I've got all these,
That's so cool, though.
I've got all these voices. But the idea of writing these split personality people who are full of different people, who are perfectly capable of surviving as and of themselves individually, they just shattered comprehensively into real people. And there's 7, 10, whatever many people living inside the same skull. It's been
now I really want to read this book.
It's been an experience. It's like trying to keep it's herding cats. It's absolutely fascinating to actually be in the middle of that story and to be able to tell that story.
So do you tell your characters what to do, or do
Oh,
they tell
hell no.
you? Oh,
hell no. Remember that story I told you about the omnibus edition about the weird creatures? One of those characters actually sat on my bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, kicking his heel on the bed, and would not let me go to sleep until he convinced me that A, he did not say what I said he said, and B, even if he did say it, he did not say it the way I said he said it. So please fix it.
I think any writer can definitely agree with you on that.
The worst thing is when they're right.
Yeah.
Such a pain.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
When you
Sometimes
go back
they're
and you
smart.
look at the stuff that he's opposed about, and you're going, yeah, you're right. I'll have to fix this. But
Sometimes
Yeah.
they're smarter than I am. You know,
they're
that's the
always
really
smarter than I am.
that's the strange part when, you know, especially when I'm writing things like a mystery or something like that, where I'm leaving clues, and so I don't reveal who the villain is or whatever. And so I'll get to this thing and I'm convinced it's this. And then I get there and go, oh, wait, this is a better, you know, the characters say, no, it's this. And you're like, oh, that's perfect. Let me go set that up. And you go back and the clues are there.
You've been writing it all along.
Yeah, but consciously, I had no clue, but subconsciously, the characters were leading me there. And I think, you know, I like to start everything from character first. If I get to know the characters, like I've told people this before. I taught a workshop at a convention. The thing was, it's like, imagine it this way: take 3 characters. They don't even have to be yours. Pick 3 characters from books or movies. 3 characters you know intimately well how that character behaves. Then create yourself a simple little plot and drop each of those characters into that plot, and you will get 3 very different stories.
Yeah.
Because those characters will inform the action that goes with the plot. They will, you know, they will tell you how they will deal with a situation. So starting with the characters is always first and foremost. And that was the big surprise with coming back to Tom Myers and In the Wind. I hadn't written Tom Myers in 12 years. You know, it had, you know, but as soon as I started, it was like it was yesterday. It was like that guy was talking to me. The biggest surprise is, though, since when I created them, there were things that I never thought I'd write them again. So there were things that I now cringe that I like named character certain things, or, you know, and I go, yeah, that doesn't, oh man, I hate that. But let me find a way to shift that, you know. But yeah, it's like one character decided she hated her name and she now goes by her middle name just because it was an awful name, you know. It was, yeah, so stuff like that. But
the things you have to do.
yeah.
Nice cheat.
Yeah, because when I read it the first time, I was young and I didn't know any better. And I didn't, you know, it was one of those things It's like, oh, this will be funny to name her this. Not thinking, 12 years later, I'm going to go, what the heck was I thinking?
I got to come back to that character.
Yeah. And she's not happy with me. No wonder I haven't heard her for 12 years. She's still sitting over in the corner going, man. So, but once I get to know these characters, though, I keep saying revisiting old friends. It's truly like that because in my head, like Alma said, they're real people. They have personalities all their own. They have voices all their own, and they will argue with me, and they will not do what I want them to half the time.
You know what I tell people a lot is if you're sitting on a bus and you see somebody in the back muttering to themselves, don't go and talk to them. They're not mad. They're just a writer arguing with a character who's trying to tell them to do something they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Well, Bobby, you said something that reminded me. We were talking, Jason, earlier about how things have changed, and I teach a lot of workshops and classes, and I have had to adapt all of those to Zoom. But one of the things that I get questions a lot, Alma, you said that people ask you, where do you get your ideas? And that's a common question. But I also recently, in the last few years, have gotten the questions about, well, how do you keep people from stealing your ideas? And I just did this for this anthology. The prompt was a photograph. You could pick one of 7 photographs, and they're like 50 or 60 authors. So there are going to be some duplications. And you're saying that about the common characters and putting them in a scenario and informing the narrative. If you've ever done that, you come up with every story is different.
Yes, of course.
Because you, the writer, create characters in that scenario that somebody else would never do. And it's fascinating to think about those characters, and then you bringing in your lady character or some of your other characters into the present day in that town, and you think, oh,
Yeah.
It can be as simple as I did a life writing workshop years ago about like memoirs, about writing your life story. And I did a workshop for like adult education years ago now. And there was a married couple who came to do this, and they would get, the class would get, I don't know, they'd have to come back with something for each class to read. And these 2 people were absolute joys because they would always write about the same thing, but they would be completely different takes. The one thing that I keep in fond memory was that time they came in and his essay was a boastful report on how he installed a bay window in his own home. And how he dealt with all the complications and how he actually put it all together and how wonderful it is. Hers, when she gave us the title, everyone fell about because the title of her essay was The Man Who Can't See Sawdust. Because he was so proud of himself. He was so, look what I've done. Look what I've accomplished with my own 2 hands. And she was the one left behind to pick up the pieces and the mess. And she was going.
But that is sometimes when you get a character in a story, how the characters treat you, the author. Mm-hmm. You're like, no, stop, you cannot do that.
Mostly mine will just sit back, cross their arms and go, I refuse to go there, I refuse to do that, and until you start cooperating, I will not do anything.
And then you're stuck. And people who do not write do not get how you can not move forward on a story because the characters aren't cooperating. If they don't write, they don't get that.
Yeah. Won't they do what you tell? Don't they do what you write? I'm like, no.
No. and most of the time, as Alma said, they're correct. Something you've set up about their character is counterintuitive to what you're asking them to do.
And it doesn't even have to be once you've started. I had a short story I'm working on now that I went to write it. I have been planning it for weeks in my head. First word down, I realized that it was a different narrator, different character narrating the story.
And that's actually part of the joy and fun and creativity of writing. It's frustrating as all get out.
You know what? It's really beautiful when you actually start talking to someone who's starting to learn this craft and they're doing something that's really wrong. And you're going, well, tell me one thing, whose story is this?
And the light bulb goes
Yeah.
off.
And the light bulb moment. Oh yeah, it's not that person's story. Thank you. How did I not see this before? But it's hard to see that if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the graft of writing that character or listening to that character talking to you, if you don't have that experience, and if you're forcing the wrong character to tell the right story, it's a hard concept to explain to somebody and
It really is.
actually figure it out.
Yeah, I like to tell people, like non-writers who don't understand when we make these comments, I usually like to tell them, have you ever read a book or you're in the reading of it and something feels out of character or something feels wrong? That's us making the characters do what we want them to. And you didn't enjoy that as a reader. That's why we don't do it, because you're gonna notice it regardless.
Yeah.
And
That's why we let them have their head and run.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I want to thank everyone for coming in for this, and I'll go around the room again and let us know where you can be found on social media. And I'll start with you, Alma.
I've got a website at almaalexander.org, and most of the stuff that I'm talking about is already on there. I have a blog there, which I try to keep up with the help of my ever-suffering husband, who keeps running it for me. Every time I just supply the material, he runs the website, so thank you. And I'm on Twitter. I've got a Facebook page that kind of covers most writing stuff. And I've also got a Patreon page where a lot of new stuff gets shown first, or a lot of stuff that nobody else ever sees is on there. So if you feel like supporting a writer, a buck or four a month will feed my cats. So I thank you.
All right, perfect. Bobby.
On social media, I'm at author Bobby Nash on Facebook. I'm at Bobby Nash on Twitter. I'm Bobby Nash Writes on Instagram, because I did not plan ahead on any of these things. So they all had the same name. I also have a Patreon page. It's Patreon/Bobby Nash. I do a serialized novel on there where I do a chapter a week. So they're getting it first. I also have an ebook of the month club for the $5. You get an ebook every month. BobbyNash.com is my website. There's all the links are there. And ben-books.com is my publishing site.
All right, perfect. And finally, Jeanne.
Well, I'm at JeanneAdams.com, which is pronounced with an I but spelled without it. And you can find me mostly on Twitter at Jeanne Adams. You can find me on Instagram at JPA Griffin, which, again, like Bobby said, I hadn't planned that one very well. You can find me on my author page on Facebook, and a personal page on Facebook, and a reader group on Facebook, and on Continual, the con that never ends. I'm there frequently as well. So.
All right, perfect. Again, thank you guys for coming in, and I want to thank everyone for watching. See you guys next week. Bye.